So now that we're recording, everyone that's listening, this is Magenta Pixie. Magenta Pixie is a wonderful teacher that I've been learning from for a number of years. And as we were talking about before, the whole intention to our conversation is to assist as many people as we can that are beginning to awaken to the reality not being quite right, I guess would be a fair statement. So if you could please tell us a little bit about your story from when you're a little girl, that would be a wonderful place to start.
Okay, well, when I was a child, obviously when things happened to me, I thought that was completely normal. I thought all children were the same. I was too young to analyse that. So there were all sorts of things really happening. My father was in the theatre. He was an opera singer. My mother was in the theatre. She was a ballet dancer and choreographer. My father was doing hypnosis backstage, so like stage hypnotism for the members of the cast and hypnotising them all to do crazy things. And when he realised that this was working and he had a gift, he then moved into actually hypnotherapy and did incredibly well with clients for many years with giving up smoking and helping with traumas and all sorts. And this was around the time that I was born. So when I was very young, if I had a headache or I was upset, my father would take me into, I suppose, a childlike form of hypnosis. I was very suggestible, as children are, and he would take my headache away and things like that. When I was about 4, 5, maybe even 6, I don't remember the exact age, they were getting into ESP, my parents, and they bought those ESP cards where you'd have wavy lines, a circle, a square, a cross, and you would have to look at the back of the card while someone's holding it, and they would send you the image and you would receive the image, and they would mark you, you know, to see how well you did. And they tested this out on me. As I said, I was very young, and I remember them being incredibly surprised at the results. And when they would hold the card, I would just look and tell them, oh, wavy line, cross. And I got extremely high results again and again. And I remember them looking and saying, that can't be possible. No way. You know, and I remember thinking, have I done something wrong? I didn't understand why my parents were so interested and why I was getting so much attention from them in this way. And then I'd just go off and play and forget about it. So these little things. When I was 7, I remember being able to do other things, such as move things with my mind, fly, speak to people in my mind. And I became frustrated. I was 7 years old. I became frustrated because I thought there's something wrong with this body. I can't do the things I should be able to do. Why have I got these memories or these knowings of being able to move things with my mind and talk to people, to be able to do so much more with simply my thoughts, basically. But I was so young, I didn't understand. I was very much a child that lived in my imagination, like many children, but extremely so, to the point where I was in a state of escapism all the time. I wouldn't come into the real world. I didn't really engage with people in a way that was meaningful for them, because I would always bring in the imaginative realm. Every conversation I would have with adults would be, this fairy says that, and I went to this world and I went through a portal. So all this stuff was going on, but I just thought this is normal childhood. So it wasn't until I was about 11 years old when I was struggling at school with swimming, and I was still wearing armbands, and I was 11 years old, so I was very late at swimming, and my father took me into hypnosis at that time. And when I was in hypnosis, something would happen to me, and I remember sort of fading out, like my consciousness was being taken to the into the background, and another aspect coming forward, a much more evolved, intelligent aspect that I perceived as male. And he would speak to my father while I was in hypnosis, and he would say, the reason why she's not coping with swimming is because of this and that. And he would talk to my father about me. And my father would say, it's your subconscious mind. And I was the first patient in hypnosis, the first subject in hypnosis for him that had actually spoken back. Obviously that happens all the time now, you know, with hypnosis technique, but back then my father had never had a client or a subject that would communicate back with him. So I was the first to do that. So it was a lot of learning for my father. Obviously, I now know that the brain went into a certain state, that suggestibility, that trance-like state that takes you into what the nine call the beyond the theta brainwave state. And of course, once the brain has been in that state, it knows what to do. So when I got into my early 30s and I consciously chose and intended to go into channeling after many, many synchronicities and being led into this, really, when I chose to consciously channel through meditation this time, it happened very, very quickly for me. Obviously, the brain knew what it was doing. So that's kind of my childhood journey. There's a lot more, but you know, we've only got a certain amount of time, so I can't really tell you the whole thing.
No, so the 9 is the collective consciousness, the white-winged collective consciousness of 9. And it was funny, I was telling a friend at CrossFit yesterday morning that I was going to be speaking to you, and I was telling her that you were talking to fairies when you were 7 years old, and she was just like, oh wow, that is so amazing. So I know she's really looking forward to hearing a little bit more. But basically you have incredible gifts. You can see, hear, feel, and communicate very, very clearly with your team, which you lovingly call the 9. And they think it's kind of funny that you gave that really long name, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So let's, what I want to do is kind of shape the whole conversation. I did get to listen to your chat yesterday with Todd, which was awesome as well. And so let's talk about, for folks that that aren't aware of this awakening, the shift in consciousness, the shift in energy that's happening on the planet, and what does it mean for them? Why do they even care? Because a lot of folks, they're not even interested. They're too busy paying their bills, going to work, dealing with children, going to soccer, that this isn't even top of mind for them. But why do they need to know about this shift in consciousness that's going on right now?
Okay,
so yours and ours. Go ahead.
Okay, so what I would say to anyone who is newly awakened and doesn't understand any of this, doesn't know what's going on, is this planet that we live on, that we are incarnated upon, there is much more of a story to this planet than most people are aware. And there's a reason why these consciously aware individuals, people that are waking up and starting to sense things and having dreams that are becoming meaningful, synchronicity, this isn't just about your own personal enlightenment into spirituality or you following a particular spiritual path or religious path. There's much more to it than that. And if you look at it in this sense, really, of a story, it can really help. And that story is that you have many, many planets and many cultures within those planets, but we're looking specifically at Earth. So from a linear time frame, we have planet Earth. And Earth was left, if you like, to evolve naturally in the way that a planetary system does. Somewhere along the line, many, many millions of years within Earth's evolution, there were other more advanced entities that, you know, and that can be interpreted in so many different ways. So that's why I say advanced entities that came in and took a role in changing the course of the evolution of this planet. So you could look at that on the one hand as infiltration. Advanced beings came in and infiltrated the natural evolution, or you could say they came in and helped it along by speeding it up. Whatever which way you want to look at it. So there was infiltration. And that infiltration, it's so vast and there are so many levels to it. But within one of these levels, within one of these perspectives, there was a certain evolution that, while being speeded up, at the same time, something had to be prevented. For example, if you look at the structure of the organic human being, we have inside our energy system and in our physical system, we have DNA. Within that system, there's a certain structure to our DNA. And that structure evolves, and as it evolves, we're able to do things, to do many things. Some of these things are the things that I remembered as a child: speak to one another with our mind, move things with our mind, fly, or transport ourselves. So somewhere along the line with this infiltration, that beautiful organic structure of our DNA was changed for many, many reasons, depending on which perspective you look at. And it was taken to a place where we were, as we are, or as we have been, in a linear sense. So we would forget, we would be in a state of amnesia. We wouldn't remember, if you like, all our past lives. We wouldn't remember who we were and our divinity and how connected we are to one another. We would be living a linear reality. And so that's one part of the story. And if you look at that story from the point of view of this planet being held down or cut off or reduced back into a lesser DNA configuration, then when that happens, or rather that did happen, there would be a time when a certain amount of individuals would do what's put out a call. Now, within the true reality, this is simply an energetic frequency. It is an energy signal given out from each individual. And when it gets to a certain level, it's responded to by other energies. But to interpret this for complete beginners in a very linear sense, how you would interpret that is many people were in a state of despair, if you like, with their inability to remember who they were. So they would all collectively pray, if you like, and say, if there's anyone out there, please help us. So this is an interpretation. It's not actually what happened. I'm going to beginner sort of level with it.
Yeah, you're using metaphors to explain.
Yeah, exactly. So when that prayer or plea gets to a certain level of, say, a certain amount of people, then that call must be answered. So basically that is what happened. A plea was put out, a call was put out, and that call was answered. So within the higher levels, this is an energy response to energy. But how we would interpret that is many beings from many different dimensions, universes, planetary systems would hear the call. They'd feel it run through them as an individual structure, as beings. Or if you want to use metaphor, these other extraterrestrial beings would be sat down and their teacher would say, look guys, Earth have made a call. You know, the DNA's been reduced over there and they want to go back to their original template. So who's going to volunteer to go in? And all these different ETs, me, I'll go. Okay, you'll go, great, we've got loads of volunteers here, millions of you. Just remember that when you go down to Earth to volunteer, you will be subject to the laws of the third dimension. You will be subject to the laws of Earth. You will also forget that you're you, and you'll forget that you came in on a mission. However, we will give you a memory trigger so that at some time in your life you will actually remember. You'll have a series of triggers that will wake you up. Yeah, that's fine, we're great, we're going to go in pure service. We love Earth, we love the children of Earth, they're our family, we're going in to help them. So in they came from the Pleiades, from Sirius, from Lyra, from Arcturus, from all over, from all different dimensional levels, and incarnated in human form. And then the time that was set for this great awakening, if you like, when everyone's going to have all these series of triggers and think, hey, I think I'm here for a reason. I wonder what that is. Oh, I have memories of this or memories of that. Or they go searching around the internet and, oh, this book or this person or this article or this website or whatever. The time set for that great awakening was around the 2012.
Yeah.
That was the time set for this Great Awakening. That does not mean 2012. Everyone on the planet is going to wake up in 2012. What that means is that's the time period, the focal point, because simply it was the end of one series of cycles and the beginning of another series of cycles, using the most basic terminology to explain it. So it was kind of like a point of the ending of one thing and the beginning of another, hence all the interpretations of end of the world. That's true. It didn't mean end of the world literally. It meant end of a series of cycles and the beginning of a whole new series of cycles. So we're in that right now. So that 2012 energy would span several years prior to 2012 and several years after 2012. You'd have a window of time where this awakening would take place, and it would take place in waves. And one could interpret that as 1,000 people wake up in 1 month, and then say 3 months later 2,000 people wake up, and say 3 months later 3,000 people, more people wake up, and the first 1,000 that woke up are going to help all the next lot that wake up. And that's how it's working. And that's what we're in now. That's why people are having these memories, having these feelings, having these dreams. That's why they're being drawn to read these kinds of books. Yes, it's a spiritual awakening. Yes, it's Kundalini activation. Yes, it's enlightenment. Personally, the reason why we don't have much literature about this as a time period is because in our history on Earth, and I'm talking about our history from the point of our known history, there is actually a history for this planet prior to our recorded history, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
But looking at the recorded history, when it comes to enlightenment and a spiritual path of raising one's awareness into this divinity, this has been done many times, many times by many individuals, either individually alone or in small groups. This is the first time within known history that this has been done on such a grand scale. So that's where we are right now.
Wonderful. Thank you. And that's a great segue into the whole polarization and why do we even incarnate anyway? My understanding is for us to have a choice, and we needed to have vast diversity to choose. Do you want to be helpful to other people, or do you want to be service to self? Service to other is what it's called. So really quickly, why do we even incarnate? Why are we born?
Well, we are born for many reasons on many levels. Ultimately, the ultimate reason is we are actually all one soul, and you can call that one unified soul, whichever name you like, God, source, the creator, etc., etc. From the point of view of that one soul, which exists permanently, there's no beginning to this soul, there's no end to this soul. It is a timeless consciousness. But from the point of view, from that one soul in a linear sense, let's say, this soul would be in a state of all innocence and not knowing what it is. So when it finds itself thinking and working out what it is, it's going to say to itself, and this is all frequency energy and a pulse. There isn't any language here, so I'm interpreting this energy into English language. This consciousness would say to itself, it would make a statement, and that's the pulse. It's the pulse of creation. That pulse of creation would say, I am, I am, I am. So it's a pulse, a creative pulse, just constantly breathing in and breathing out. But after a while, and again, this is a linear perception of a timeless moment, there would be a response to that I am. And that response would be, am I? So a question would then be reflected back. That's the beginning of polarity, the beginning of dualism. So you could say we have the unified male-female entity saying I am, and then it polarizes into two entities, a male saying I am and a female saying am I. Basically what this means is, if you interpret it into an answer and a question, it would be, I am conscious. And the answer would be, are you conscious or am I conscious? How do you know you're conscious?
Yeah.
Well, because I'm thinking. But what's thought? So we've got this pulse of creative expression that can be interpreted as, am I conscious? I am conscious. Are you conscious? Am I conscious?
And that's kind of really what we're exploring here as human beings, right? Am I conscious? Am I aware of what I'm creating, or am I not aware of what I'm creating?
Absolutely. So the next step from that pulse would be, let's find out. Let's find out the answer to, am I conscious? So then there would be another pulse that comes out from this timeless consciousness. And that pulse would be translated into something like, I wish to experience all and everything in order to know. So this is where you have Source or God as all innocent and all knowing, because at the beginning, he, she, they are all innocent, and then they become all knowing. But it's a oneness. It's in all innocence and all knowing in one timeless moment. The way for consciousness to discover if it's conscious is to experience everything. Absolutely everything, and we cannot envisage that in a third dimensional sense. So a newly awakened spiritual person will think, gosh, these concepts are like a bit above me, and you don't have to experience them. What I'm saying here is, in order for consciousness to experience everything, then every single thing that you can possibly imagine in your mind is an experience for that energy. One of the experiences for that energy is to come into human form and experience separation, because that entity, that oneness is completely all unified. So coming into a physical body, we're separate. You know, I can be Magenta and you are Paula, and we are separate from one another. And then when we experience separation fully enough to integrate that separation, then we can start to remember, that's the Great Awakening, actually, we're both the same being, we're both one, and we're both this pulse. So ultimately, that's the reason we incarnate. But that's the highest dimensional form of why. Then there are many other reasons why. For example, we answered the call, so that's why we came to Earth. And then there'll be other things, which is far more individual, but again, everything goes back to Source. Everything you do literally is decoded by that higher energy. Every single thing you do becomes a memory field and learning of that original question. I want to experience all and everything to discover if I'm conscious. So you will have an individual reason why you're here, such as you might be here to experience unity. So personally, unity within family. So you might experience something like loneliness. You would experience loneliness in order to understand unity and family, because when you come into separation, you come into polarity. So within the non-polarity, within the oneness, there is no polarity. There's no female, male, light and dark, good and bad, hot and cold. It doesn't exist. It's all one. But here we have polarity, and that's when we get back to what you said about choice. We choose our polarity. Are we going to be of the light, and are we going to be loving beings and what is called service to others? Or are we going to be the opposite to that? You know, are we going to be loving and compassionate, or are we going to be selfish and greedy? Are we going to experience controlling others and taking energy from others in order to empower ourselves? Or are we going to experience unifying with others in order to empower ourselves? So we have two choices. We have service to others and service to self, which are also known as positive polarization and negative polarization. So ultimately, the choice is actually our polarization. We come here to choose how to polarize, and then we polarize collectively. So everyone who polarizes negative creates a negative entity or dimension or frequency, which is part of creation. Mm-hmm. And everyone who comes here to polarize positively experiences the creation of a positive entity or dimension or entire experience. Again, part of creation, the opposite.
And what's really interesting, I find now in my own experience, is the amount of people that absolutely do not believe in God. Some people will say, well, I think there's something, I believe in spirit, and I believe in angels, guardian angels, but it seems like there's been a systematic effort to steer people away from their own internal knowing and being, the organic light as it's been referred to, or the truth of who we are, the heart of God. And so what would the nine and what would yourself say to that? Because this is now what we're waking up to, is these systems that were all about greed and selfishness and non-forgiveness, judgmental, and all of those qualities, if you might want to call them qualities.
There indeed has been a concerted agenda to prevent individuals from not necessarily believing in God. What the agenda is to take individuals away from their own inner knowing that they are divine and that they are sovereign, and how much power that they have, and how much power they have when they join with others in a collective unity. You don't have to believe in God. This is the thing. You do not have to believe in God. You do not have to believe in any kind of deity. You do not have to believe in anything specific. What the journey is finding yourself. So what does that mean to you? So if somebody believes in angels but not in God, that's absolutely fine. If somebody believes in the power of nature and trees but not in God, that's absolutely fine. If someone thinks of themselves as a complete atheist but believes in molecules and particles inside a scientific experiment that they're doing, that's absolutely fine. It's about what is meaningful to you, that is ultimately going to assist you and your fellow man, your true family, in creating a compassionate, loving world. So it doesn't have to be through any belief. Obviously, if you do have a spiritual belief and you believe in God and source, it's going to assist you in that way. But there are people who consider themselves atheists that are actually starseeds that are waking up, and they are discovering their inner power and their inner journey through science, or through the fitness industry, or through nutrition, or something else. So it doesn't have to be a belief in any kind of deity, or what the issue is when it comes to belief, some people will go into polarity and they'll think, well, if I don't believe in God, then I must believe in a devil. Or if I don't believe in God, then I must believe in nothing. It's not really about that. It's about opening one's belief system and being open-minded and allowing these open statements to occur within you as you analyze your reality. Well, the minute you bring the shutters down, such as there is no God, you've made an assumption, you've made a decision. There is a God, you've made an assumption, you've made a decision. The statement in the seeking phase is, I don't know if there's a God, there may be, there may not be, and I'm completely open to deciding what the answer to this question is. Or one might come to the conclusion, I know that there is no God because I am self. Or they might come to a decision, I know that there is a God because I'm completely unified with it. These statements may be different, but one can't look at them and say, well, that's right and that's wrong. These are just different expressions and different perspectives of a larger truth. And it all comes down to yourself and your own belief system, and how that belief system, that paradigm, assists you in making sense of your reality and your experience of life, and what you have to offer and give to this life.
And on that point, being trapped by a belief system directly impacts your immediate creation of your own reality, your own matrix, as you've referred to it. If you are steadfast on what is you're open to and what you're closed to, or whether what you agree to or not agree to, then that is going to be your experience. But would it be accurate to state that as soon as you open up a little, hold your belief systems a little bit looser so that you're open to new ideas, then you are open to the universe bringing you new experiences that are more expansive?
Exactly, that's exactly how it works. Your belief system, and it isn't just about belief, it's more about your absolute decision that you have made that's right. And then it's not so much belief, it's more you've created an answer to the question that you would be seeking in belief, and you have come to an assumption. This is reality, this is real, this exists, this does not. And the minute you bring those shutters down into these assumptions and these, as I say, beliefs, your experience will reflect that back to you. So basically, what you are believing, what you are knowing, the universe will prove to you that you are correct. The reason why that happens is your thoughts and your emotions are at one with that oneness, that unification that I spoke about. That reflects itself to you in everything because you are at one with everything. And if you want to look at that externalized aspect of you, then it is a intelligence, and it presents in perhaps particles, if you like. And if you look at physics, you will see that when a particle is observed, it will change its behavior or its motion in response to the observer. So that's what happens when you hold a belief structure that you've discovered within yourself as an answer, as a knowing. Then that particle, or that series of particles, wants to be seen by you. And the only way it can be seen by you is to reflect like a mirror. So therefore, it will show you you're right. So if you believe this person is a member of an Illuminati cabal group and they're corrupt, and you really believe it, you'll have proof to prove that you're right. But somebody else might see that same person and say, this person's an angel, an absolute amazing healer, and is just so loving and has a wonderful open heart. That person will, the universe will prove to that person that they are right. So we're building paradigms here, structures, like sort of externalized aspects of ourselves as buildings or houses, if you like. It's actually geometry. Mm-hmm. We're building structures where we can understand what's happening with these particles, and we can move beyond the I've got this belief system, so I want you as a group of particles to prove to me that my belief system is right, and move into I wish to unify with these particles and actually see where all these belief systems are correct. And you know, if this mirror wants to communicate with me by showing me that my thoughts are correct, well, what is this particle? Why is it doing that? Let's have a more meaningful communication. And you build a structure, you build a paradigm, and that becomes a knowing. So what you're doing really is shaping your reality. And that's the whole New Age or light worker philosophy of creating your reality. The law of attraction. You have a newcomer come into this and think, well, what does creating your reality mean? I don't understand that. What does law of attraction mean? You know, I'll think of a shiny red car, and then a week later, will someone give me a shiny red car? And if they do, it's like, yay, I've manifested something. And if it doesn't happen, it didn't work. It's kind of like that, but that's a very basic interpretation. What you're actually doing here is unifying your true self together as you build this structure, and you're creating paradigms, and you're shaping your reality from the paradigm. So you're correct when you say, as your belief systems change, then the universe will reflect back to you a completely different reality, which is why we can go into other philosophies that are out there at the moment within the sort of light work and new age community, and with my own teachings from the nine, that there are two worlds, if you like, or three worlds, whichever model, they're both correct. So, you know, you've got, if you go for the two world, which is far more easier for people and more basic, you have a third dimensional world and a fifth dimensional world, and they superimpose upon one another and they exist together. But the people existing with within that third dimensional world are living in a completely different reality to the people in the fifth dimensional world, even though they might be stood in the same room, holding hands, hugging each other and having a conversation. They're existing in a completely different world, as in dimension, as in reality.
And then to explain those two differences from a 3D perspective, the world pushes things at me and I'm responding to what is coming at me, versus in a 5D world, I'm a master of my own matrix, my own field, and I work with the creative energies to create a much more robust, colorful, expanded reality. Said another way, I explained it to somebody once, from 3D, you're just living in the physical body. But from a 5D perspective, the difference between would be like an artist attempting to create a picture without color and emotion to make it more alive and more meaningful, really.
Perfect, absolutely. You know, spot on, perfect, wonderful metaphor and analogy. That's exactly how it is. A 3D person will react to their environment. They don't realize that they are an intrinsic part of their reality and that they're creating it. It'll be things like, why has this got to keep happening to me? It's not fair. I've got such bad luck. And everyone around them will reinforce it by saying, oh no, you poor thing, you don't deserve that. This happens all the time. And no one's to say that that isn't true, because from a third dimensional point of view, it's potentially true. You know, maybe they didn't deserve that in a third dimensional sense, but they're creating their reality. It's a difficult thing to explain to someone in 3D because it sounds insulting.
Yeah.
All the suffering you've been through for the last 6 months, you could created it all yourself. And their answer is going to be, how dare you?
Yeah.
And you can't blame them for feeling like that. And they're right. It's an insulting thing to say. So you have to be very careful with spirituality and when you're a teacher, because you're trying to explain a concept that cannot be understood from a third dimensional point of view, because you are not in that reality. So when you are a spiritual teacher or a spiritually awakened person, you will find one of the things that will happen to every single person in this reality right now. You are going to be faced with people from all different dimensional belief systems and consciousness states. And you are going to find yourself in a state where whatever you say will either empower one person and heal them and harm and upset another. And you have to have a constant balancing act and constantly be describing what you're doing and finding ways, and that teaches you to be able to interpret this frequency, this code around us, because there are no words to it. So that's exactly what happens. And when somebody then raises their frequency into this 5D, and I say raises, that's again just a linear way of explaining more light, or rather a different structure of light. It's or from an idea perspective, or the way they talk to themselves, raising your vibration would be focusing more on the positive, looking for the lesson in every challenge, as opposed to why does this happen, and being in the lower negative thoughts of fear, resentment, bitterness, judgment, and moving towards gratitude, appreciation. I'm learning through this. It happens for me, through me, not to me, kind of. Absolutely, 100% spot on. What I would say to that, though, is for beginners, that's difficult to hear, because again, they will say, well, I am focusing on hatred, anger, upset, crying, stress, worry. So obviously I'm not very spiritual, I'm completely failing, and I'm not raising my vibration. But so then they will feel worse, and then they will go into a vicious cycle where they just feel completely invalidated or whatever. So what I would say to that is that the path to this integration, the path to this ability to create a paradigm and a structure to create our reality, part of that path is going to be experiencing a full spectrum of emotions. So it is not bad or wrong to be angry, frustrated, annoyed, upset, frightened, anxious. All of those things are normal. We're human. What is the issue here is, how long do you stay there? Mm-hmm. Do you stay in depression, anger, hatred, and mistrust for 7, 8, 10 years? or do you move through these emotions within a matter of days or weeks? There's no right or wrong amount of time to spend there, as long as the aim is to integrate these emotions, find out why you're experiencing them, and learn from them. They are actually there to teach us just as much as the higher emotions. But yes, raising the vibration would ultimately be a metaphor to explain moving from lower upsetting emotions into blissful, joyful ones. That doesn't mean that the light workers and the New Age community are what they are archetypally presented to mean, which is people sitting around rejecting fear, rejecting hatred, opening their hearts, sitting on a fluffy cushion with a beautiful crystal next to them in a place of divine bliss 24/7. Some of them might be great, but it is about integrating everything. Right. And there is a misconception outside of the New Age light worker community that that's how everyone is. And some are. There are some people who do reject completely. Oh, don't feel guilt. Don't put guilt onto me. No, we don't do that. Instead of integrating it. Or like, oh, you're full of fear, a lot of judgment in the New Age community, saying, oh, that person's full of fear, isn't she? Oh, yes, that goes on all the time as well. That's not where we need to be.
Yeah, exactly.
So there are so many different...
And your book, this one, Masters of the Matrix, is fantastic in teaching how you integrate your emotions. It was wonderful. In preparation for our conversation, I read it a second time. And I remember when you first wrote it, this is a couple of years back in 2016, I remember a talk that you did. And I think you'd said something like you'd read it 6 times, you still didn't understand it, and you wrote it. And I remember when I read it the first time, I'm like, I don't really get this codes that are being made through my thoughts and whatnot. But I read it a second time, and now I really get it. So it's amazing how when time passes and your consciousness changes, you can absorb it and comprehend it much more. Okay, so going back to the whole service to self structure and service to other structure, how we need to integrate these emotions. It's not about denying the shadow side, because one of my other teachers, Paul Selig out of New York, he channels, we call them the guides. They've only come through once as Melchizedek. I'd really be curious what the 9 would say, what their response would be to the Melchizedek energy. Because if I look at the Book of Enoch, it talks about Archangel Michael, Metatron, and Melchizedek all working together, the Great White Brotherhood.
Yes.
If we have time, maybe at the end, we'll ask about that. But
well, I can tell you now that in one word, the 9 would say, hello, and okay. I recognize you. That's what they would say.
Awesome. Okay, so we have now the reveal, this great reveal, the deluge of information happening on the planet. Where the service to self structure that has been at play here on our planet for eons of time is now being revealed. Said another way, the greed, the selfishness, the taking from, the disempowering or taking from others is starting to be revealed slowly, because of course we've got lots of interesting things going on with the mainstream media not reporting the truth and whatnot. And this might be a great segue into Mr. Trump, into the US president, who, I know, right? And Q, because there's a big push to discredit what Q is doing. And so what maybe a good place to start is we have things being revealed now on the planet that have been going on in secret. Which is starting to, like, as I say, the financial system and some of the religious structures and whatnot, and what is going on with Mr. Trump. So from the first time you took a look at Mr. Trump, I think it was 2 years ago, you did a channeling on it, or a year and a half, you did a channeling, because everybody is waking up, right? So who would say that Mr. Trump wouldn't be waking up, nor would his team be? What would you say to his matrix right now, or what are you seeing? Because you had some remote viewing recently where you could see he was operating in very, very high integrity and just moving papers and making decisions. What would you share about that, Magenta?
Well, firstly, for a beginner waking up to this, the very first discovery for them within this great reveal is the fact that there is a structure upon this planet that is that holds a different agenda. So we talk about service to others and service to self. There are individuals that are not polarizing within a positive polarization, within service to others, compassion and love. There is a structure that is polarizing within an opposite frequency, within a negative polarization. And they have a very, very different agenda. They're creating a different reality. And those people exist. And I'm not just talking about energies or extraterrestrials. I'm talking about actually incarnated human people. And these individuals, they're known, they've been known as the Illuminati. I believe they don't go by that name anymore. It's the ancient word that they would have used for themselves. The nine would refer to these individuals as the family, but they are also known as the elite, the cabal, and the deep state. So, and many other things too. So these individuals, they have got themselves into a situation where they've been able to control many structures on this planet. And they do this through secrecy and through subterfuge. So others don't know what they are doing, even though they do tell us what they're doing in ways that many of us cannot interpret, but that still gives them the release to know we've followed the law, we've told them what we're doing, now we're going to do it. So this has been going on for thousands of years. And one of the structures that they have managed to infiltrate very heavily is the political system. And so this political structure has been controlled by this group of individuals that are negatively polarized or are aiming to negatively polarize. It's very difficult to do. For thousands of years, they've controlled the political system. And whenever someone has come into the political system that's different, that can't, that isn't of the family, if you like, because often they're part of the family, they're as in born into their structure, so they're of their bloodline, they're related to them. They try to keep everything within that bloodline, but sometimes if people come into the system outside of the bloodline, as long as they follow their agenda and they can be controlled, then that's fine. But whenever somebody comes into that system that is a little bit different, somehow someone of the light, someone of potential positive polarization or full positive polarization has managed to get into that structure, they will be controlled or removed in some way. And so that's what's been going on for such a long time. And with the election, the recent election in America between Hillary Clinton and Trump, I didn't pay any attention to the lead up to the election at all. I would switch it off, the television. I was completely focused elsewhere. And the nine did not direct me to look. In fact, they directed me not to look. So, you know, I can see when I look at a photograph of someone, I can read the energy. And I was working at that time with, I think I worked for 7 years with clients, and I would work with clients all over the world. So the predominant working for me was on Skype. So it would be through, as we're doing now, video or photographs. So I'm quite practiced in reading photographs, and that's how I look at energies, although I can see them without seeing a photo, but the photo really does help to focus it. So I didn't look at either Trump or Hillary at all until after the election. And then when the election had taken place and Trump had won, I decided to have a look. I thought, I'll have a look at these people, see what they're like. I haven't read anything anywhere. And it's good, really, because you get confirmation when you do everything internally first and make your analysis, your assumption, you make your, you have a look at everything. And then you go off and perhaps do some research that might back up what you found out. That's a good way to test your sensitivity and empathy and clairvoyance. So I looked at Hillary, and the first thing I thought is, oh, goodness me, she's within the family. She's part of the family, this structure, and she has been groomed since birth to be where she is. So it was never her husband, it was always her, you know.
And what would you see? Like, I know this is very difficult for you to express, but what would you see in a service to self energy matrix when you're gazing upon them in the best way you can explain with language?
Okay. Obviously, symbols that I see are for my own interpretation, but I will see a particular frequency code within their, I say matrix, but their matrix is so different. It's not really a matrix like the service to others. It's different. What I see is something when I interpret this particular shape, color, structure, it kind of looks like a hook or a claw, actually, and it's black, but that's very meaningless, because your own, what you see is for your own interpretation.
Understood.
The interpretation of that is a hive mind.
Okay.
So they all have it, and it all links into, like this claw, it's awful. It all links into this same structure that is, you know, in Star Trek, like the Borg.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't look like that energetically, but that is kind of how it is. It's a hive mind, as in they're all one person. They're not, they're all individual people, but they're speaking the same energy from the one person, which is an individualized structure that is fully polarized negative and service to self. Service to others do something completely similar but utterly different, and completely the opposite, because their group soul is comprised of an infinite number of individualized souls. That's service to others, and service to self is made up of one individualized soul, simply because that's a hierarchical structure, and it's the person at the top of the tree. So it's always one. It's always me, not you. I will consume you and to get me. But in service to others, it's a circle, it's a spiral, it's a round table construction. Everybody is equal. So it's very, very different. So it's a hive mind. So, you know, I can see who's in it. And then there are other people who are kind of not in the hive mind, but they're controlled by them or by a corporation or structure that controls them. Mm-hmm. Or they're somehow linked to it, and some of these people are aware that they're controlled by the structure, and they're okay with it because they're getting so many perks, although that's changing. Mm-hmm. And then there are others who have no idea that they are in that structure, and that's what's so difficult right now for people, because we are undergoing a collective lesson in discernment, mm-hmm. at the same time as undergoing the deluge. So we've got a flood of information, literally a tidal wave of information, which on a third dimensional level is perceived as information, literally, and in a higher dimensional sense it's light. We are being flooded with light, which is lovely when you're in 5D. We're being flooded with information, which is chaotic when you're in 3D, and at the same time we're going through a collective lesson in discernment. So if we haven't raised our frequency into that higher viewpoint, we are not going to be able to discern amongst this deluge. It's too much information. It's information overload for the 3D person. You know, they can't get out of that tidal wave. It's like, they're under the waves. 5D will take you above the waves, you know, into using that analogy, and you're able to see. I think it was Einstein that said, you can't solve a problem from the level of a problem. You need to go above the level of the problem to solve the problem, or words to that effect. And that's exactly the situation. If you go up to 5D and look down into 3D, like, oh, look at all that chaos, and oh, look, I can see. So you see,
which is perspective, which is a much bit from this perspective. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's it. That's perspective. That's all it is. So with the political situation, I looked at Hillary and I saw the hive mind, and I saw that she was groomed, and she was their girl and groomed from birth. There would have been others. There would have been others, you know, second, and they would have all been groomed. They wouldn't just have one. But she was definitely destined for this role. And many around her were convinced they had this sorted. You know, there's no way that she would lose. And then I looked at Trump, and I saw, it's interesting, because even with being able to see that Hillary is part of a service to self structure, there are still certain permissions and etiquettes to levels that you cannot look. So there's no way that I would go pushing that. If I see an etiquette that I can't go beyond, out of respect for Hillary, whether I give her respect or not on a physical level is, despite what she has done or her group has done, is not the point. One must understand respect and etiquette within the higher fields, otherwise one can't remote view. So I would see a certain barrier that I wouldn't be able to look beyond. Whereas Trump, because he's so, what's the word? I guess the nearest word to explain him would be loose cannon.
Okay.
Because he's
Cryon, he or Lee Carroll channels Cryon, and he's referred to him as a wild card.
Yeah, exactly. But what that means energetically is everyone can see me. There's no boundaries there. He has no boundaries within the energetic field. And that's good because someone who is able to see energy can see him quite clearly. However, there are many levels to this. And what I would say is with Trump, there is a certain projection of a whole spectrum of energies. And wherever you are in your own integration, you are going to see in him, like you will in everybody, we're all one another's mirror, but because he's the president and he's in that position, and the United States is the central point within this energy and is the new America, which is interpreted into the new Atlantis. So it's the central point, and he's the president of that. Then in a way, it's almost as though on the higher levels, he's given permission to be seen. I mean, I don't mean fully personally. You're not going to go in and read, you know, this entire life history and what he dreams about and what he does with his grandchildren. But there's more of him that is seen clairvoyantly than is usual. Most people would give permission to go beyond that. Like if you said to me, yes, you can read me, Magenta, I'd go beyond because the etiquettes are taken away. You've given permission. Hillary hasn't, so I'm not going to go beyond those etiquettes because I've been trained not to. But Trump, there aren't many etiquettes there, so you can see him really clearly. It's funny. So he's got this whole spectrum of energies, and what you are in your entire makeup, you're going to see him as a giant mirror. And it's like some people have described him as the collective shadow. Yes, he's mirroring the shadow. But the way to see clearly is not through 3D, because in 3D, especially if you don't know that the service to self group exists, then the Trump you are looking at is a false Trump. It's been created by the service to self structure via the controlled media system. So you are making a discernment, you are using discernment through analysis of reports within media, and then the cleverly edited clips that will show the worst side of him, because he has got a dark side. You will see that dark side, and again, your belief system, as I said, the particles within the universal structure will prove to you you're right. So if you think Trump is an absolute idiot, he's horrible, he's awful, and he should never be a president, life will prove to you that you are right, and you actually are. It's not that you're wrong, because what you're seeing is a genuine perspective. But it's a third dimensional perspective of somebody who isn't seeing that control structure. If there were no control structure at all, and this was a free planet, there was no cabal, and everyone was on the path to positive polarization, of course Trump would not be president, because there are millions of other loving, open-hearted, extremely ethical businessmen who are great at politics, and there probably wouldn't even be a government, let's face it, if that occurred. But anyway, but we're not in that reality. So the first step for people is to see the control structure, but even within that, people who are aware of the control structure, fully aware, now they might make the assumption Trump's in that control structure, he's one of them. That will be a reflection, because there are certain behaviors that he has to engage within that will be the same. So it's difficult to tell the difference. So they haven't made a wrong assumption. They just haven't unraveled all the layers yet. There are multi-layers, like, that vegetable, an artichoke, you have to peel all the layers off. You have to go in further to see. There are many layers to the auric field, many layers to the matrix. So obviously I looked at those layers and I saw that he was independent. He was not cabal. And a lot of people that would-be Illuminati cabal would be compromised very quickly. It's happened before, or removed, or whatever. But because he's got such a strong self-righteous, it's quite narcissistic. It's not fully narcissistic in a really negative way, although a lot of people will see that. I would say it's mild narcissism, but you know, everybody has their own opinion. But that narcissism, what it's done is narcissism makes you think me. Everything comes back to me. You know, I'm great, I'm this, I'm that. And because Trump has such a patriotism to America, he sees America through his life experiences, he sees America as him. He owns it, you know, it's his, which is a terrible way of thinking on one level, but it's exactly what's needed for a president in a cabal-controlled structure. So he can sit there and think to himself, I am America. And then he'll be narcissistic towards America being him, as in a narcissistic person, as you know, if you say anything against them, they will defend their boundaries. That's where his boundaries come in. They're not balanced necessarily, but they are really strong when it comes to him and the people he loves, and America, the whole of America. Well, is that not the most perfect person to be the president right now in a cabal-controlled structure? He's independent, and then of course you've got this swirl of support around him that's a service to others' energy, and that comes in from many levels. There are individuals that are putting right things that they've done wrong in the past. There are individuals who've jumped from one alliance to another. You've got individuals who don't really care about spirituality but want to see the cabal brought down. You've got individuals who do care about spirituality, and then you have starseeds, and you've got many that are unknowingly lending their energy and their light to all structures that need them. And then you have many that are consciously supporting Trump and what he's doing. But this is very misinterpreted, because other starseeds who are fully aware of the cabal and fully aware of the structure but see the shadow side, they will say things like, I cannot go along with this belief system that Trump is a savior, that he's a light worker, and that he's going to save the planet, and that he's some kind of angel in disguise. Well, you don't have to go along with that belief system, because that's not what is being said. However, if you look at that structure and you do believe that Trump is a savior and he's an angel in disguise, you're correct from the point of view that he has a service to others guidance system. So yes, he's an angel in disguise, and he's going to save in the sense that he's instrumental in bringing down the cabal. But if you don't want to see that, you're correct as well, because that's not what he is. He's human, and he's not single-handedly taking down the cabal. He has support on many different dimensional levels. The ultimate point here is one person in that election was cabal. And if that person gets in as president, then you have a hive mind in control of the most powerful political structure.
Yeah.
The wild card, using Lee Carroll's word, the wild card is not in that hive mind. So the hive mind can't get to that part of him. So it's like, no, all these plans that we had, which Hillary would have executed perfectly as the representative for the hive mind, they can't get in. And he's changing everything. He's like, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that, because I'm narcissistic. America is me, and that's not good for America. That's not good for America. And he's bashing the cabal's plans down to dust. Yeah,
which actually does have a ripple effect with the rest of the planet.
Yes,
so
it does.
I think a couple of, and I actually think it was another statement that the Pleiadians might have talked before, and I think it was in your books as well, about starseeds being system busters. So from a 3D perspective, Mr. Trump would be busting a system that does not support the masses.
Yes.
But if you're only 3D and aren't aware of if you're not aware of the control system, that wouldn't make any sense to you whatsoever.
None whatsoever. No, and you're going to be reading mainstream reports because you're going to think, well, this is the media, this is the news.
Yeah.
They don't see the hive mind. They're thinking, if these 200 people all don't like Trump and think he's deranged and mentally ill, then that's 200 people. They can't all be wrong. But the truth is, it's one person.
Yeah.
It's the hive mind. And they are all coming forward with the same belief. And it's coming out in every single, structure that's part of that hive mind. It's not 200 people. It's not the majority. This is the thing. The majority... that the minority are presenting as if they are the majority. So other people, when they're making their decisions through the seeker phase, we always look to see, well, what do the majority think? Yeah, the majority decision, that must be right. But the majority are not the control system. They are the minority. The majority are the people outside that have been shut out of that system that are now waking up. We are the majority, and Trump is in our camp, regardless of what he, says in men's locker rooms 20 years ago about women. It doesn't make any difference. It's completely irrelevant in this situation. It would be relevant in a non-cabal controlled world, because that would be part of a undesirable personality. Yeah. It's not relevant in this situation. What's relevant?
We need him to be that strong and that tough and whatnot. Yeah, and that it's so interesting, because I've had folks attack me. I said, no, I do support Mr. Trump. Oh, you're one of those. Yeah. I'm like, no, I'm pro change, and I see
absolutely
change. Yeah,
pro change, and I have been too. And I sometimes post things on my Facebook profile, and it causes such division every time. And at the end of the day, I kind of think, should I even post anything? Because it's not division that I want to create, it's unity. The thing is, the division is created within the people, and they are jumping into one camp or another on this one issue, and very, very invested emotionally in this situation, in America specifically. I mean, it's bad in the UK too, but I don't think people in the UK are as invested, although spiritually aware people will be, because we don't see countries as individuals. Like, people will say to me, Magenta, you're in the UK. How could you possibly know what it's like to feel that Trump didn't get in, or Trump did get in, win the election? You're in England, you're nothing to do with it. But in the true reality, there are no countries. We are a oneness. So what happens in this country is we are all one. And of course, many of us who are not in America have had past lives in America. We have memories of living in America, and we have patriotism to America from the perspective of that past life. Yeah, I myself have that. So I know what it feels like to be patriotic to America as a country. I understand the deep patriotism to the US from a past life. And I had to work to let it go, because I thought, that's just too strong. I can't do what I'm here to do in this life with this intense patriotism, because while it's lovely and beautiful and it's good, one needs to move into unity and release patriotism into unification. And it's a surrender, whereas patriotism is more, I own this, I'm part of it, and I will defend it with absolute honor. And it can take you into a battle mentality. And that's a whole other story, a whole other issue. Many people are aware we're in a spiritual war, a psychic battle. And yes, we are, but we cannot go forward within that with battle mentality, because it's polarity. We must rise above this into unification in order to free the planet and reconstruct our DNA structure back into its organic, original template, which is ultimately the whole point of ascension and what we're doing with this awakening.
So you talked about early, as a collective, we're learning to discern truth. And
yes.
I know in your first book, The Masters of the Matrix, you have an exercise there where you repeat your name, you say something.
Yes.
How do you know if something's true, right? You repeat your name, my name is Paula. That feels, a lot of people don't even like to feel right now. They don't like the way it feels, so they'll cover it up with another feeling because it's
Yes.
right. It's a bit
Yes.
traumatic to deal with that. But discerning truth, the easiest way for you to teach people how to discern truth. Could we touch on that real quick? Because then I want to get into like Dreamtime Decoding. I love that channel you did with the Dreamtime News channel. And then get into some deeper concepts if we can with our remaining time together. It's gone by so fast.
Yes. Okay, so it's being aware that the body, your body, is like an antenna. It has a resonance to it. It's like a crystal, you know, and it knows, the body has its own consciousness, its own mind, and it knows truth, certainly truth to you. And this is shown in things like kinesiology, muscle testing. So when you make a statement, that aspect of the body, or the matrix and the body matrix all in one, can know everything that's ever happened, everything that's happening now in all timelines, and everything that will ever happen. So you have an akashic field of knowledge. When you make a statement that you know is true, there will be a feeling with that. And if you haven't felt before, then that's the place to start. What does it feel like? And it isn't just emotion, it's energy. Where's the resonance? What you see in your mind? Do you see a shape? Do you see a color? Do you hear a word? You know, do you hear words? Do you see letters? What does it feel like within the whole energy system to make a truthful statement that you know is true? So my name, my birth name is Petra. So when I say my birth name is Petra, I know this to be a truthful statement. Therefore, what do I see? I see alignment. I see balance. I see symmetry. I might hear a word. Yep, that's true. Your birth name was Petra, whatever. When you make a false statement that you know is false, and when you are multidimensional in thinking, this is difficult because you can find truth in many statements. I mean, I could say, my name is Paula, and that would actually be true from one perspective, as in that I'm you. So one has to, when you're not multidimensional, you're 3D, that's fine. You can say, my name is Petra, my name is Susan. Yep, that's not true. I'm not Susan. Yes, I am Petra. But obviously, I used to have clients, and I'd say, do this exercise with them, and they go, but I am you, and I am that name. And I think, on, how am I going to work with this person? But anyway, find something that you know to not be true, such as in the physical dimension, in a third dimensional incarnation, my name is not Paula. That is not, sorry, that is true. My name is Paula. You would say, my name is Paula in the physical dimension. My mother gave me the name Paula. No, that's not true. All out of balance. It feels wrong. You get a big no feeling. You might have someone talking to you. You might feel different, whatever. And that's where to start. That's the start point. Practice. And that's the key. It's practice. It's the same as learning to play an instrument. It's the same as learning to do yoga. You will learn. And the more practice, the better you get at this. You learn to feel the energy system and feel the chakras. So you can say, bigger statements such as Donald Trump is not part of the cabal. Donald Trump is part of the cabal. You can feel those statements, or you can go even more into, I am originally from the Pleiades. I am originally from Sirius. I am a multidimensional being, and I am linked to all planets. I am source incarnate. I am activating my diamond light codes. I am activating my 144 strand DNA template. I am a genius. All these things. And you will know where the parameters are. For example, if I say I can fly, I'm going to grow literal physical wings tomorrow and fly around my town. I'm like, that's not going to happen. Why? Because the boundaries of physics are not allowing it. But when I go into meditation and close my eyes, I can create a stargate and go through it, and I can grow astral or higher dimensional wings, and I can fly. Yes, you can. That is truth. So you can work with anything once you understand, but start at the most simple thing and learn what it feels like to make a truthful statement and to make a false statement. And then you can see it in other people too. You can hear other people speak and think, no, that's not right. That is right. This person's wonderful and telling truth and is genuine and authentic. This person's hiding something. Let's go behind the layers. And then you learn, I've got a block here. I'm not allowed to look. Why? A, it's not ethical, or B, this person's created their own psychic boundary, so I can't look. Because there are many people that do this. They can create their own psychic levels and false screens, and that's what the cabal have done, created false screens and many, many layers, and we are slowly breaking them down. The minute they are seen, They no longer hold the power. They cannot hold the structure. The reason why they hold the structure is because they are unseen.
Yeah.
And we're seeing them now, and more and more and more people are seeing them every day. And conversations like this are making people think, oh, right. And then they start to see. And it's just breaking it down, which is wonderful, because we're going to have that planet that we want, which is a non-controlled planet where we're free. That's where we're headed, and that's where we will be. It's done.
Yeah, it's really exciting too to have awareness of this shift.
Yes.
From multiple perspectives truly is a gift. And
yes.
To your point, the whole collapse of the third dimension, or the service of self structure, you touch on that in pretty good detail in your new book, The Infinite Helix and the Emerald Flame, which I haven't got to read all of it yet, but that's all I'm doing right now is reading it. Okay, let's talk about the dream time. Yeah, I've got my copy here too. Lovely.
It's very green.
It's lovely. Yeah, the
emerald. I was.
And what I love is in that book you talk about energy, the light, like the Luciferian light, being pure intelligence, and how it's the indigo ray, which is the third eye chakra ray, and then it blending with the heart, which is the emerald flame, and that what gives us the solar logos, the God consciousness, or what have you. I love what you're bringing forward. I love my mind being stretched so much. So really quickly, let's talk about the Dreamtime News Channel. I know that I have had some pretty freaky, crazy dreams. And I know that even for some folks that are, you've talked about this before, that are starting to newly awaken, maybe they're not even interested in spirituality, but they're having really weird dreams. So let's talk about the news channel, the Dreamtime News Channel, and how can people work with their dreams to help them understand a little bit more about their path, what they need to look at, etc. Okay. And then I want to get into the reconstructing of the 5D and the superhero stuff.
Okay, well, first of all, just to say with the book, it is the 9 that are bringing this information forward. I know it's me writing it, but from that perspective, that's the 9. I'm still integrating the information from that book. So just to, when you talk about everything you said, it's me, yes, but I'm in an integrative process. And when I brought that forward, I was in that communicative sort of light trance state, if you like, bringing forward in the expansive state. So what actually happens is I go into the expansive state to bring everything forward. So that's the 9. And then individuals who are analysing will go into the expansive state. The book will send you into that expansive state in order to be able to integrate and understand the material. So it's like this wave. And we move in and out, because sometimes I go out of that state. And when I go back to read The Infinite Helix and the Emerald Flame, I'll go back to the state and then remember, because it's about more than one concept, and I had to go into that multi-locational consciousness, bilocation, trilocation, and multi-location, in order to understand what it means. I was shown it and experienced it, and you can't live there. Mm-hmm. So just to say that. So about your question about the dreams. So this is something that would occur with complete beginners to spirituality. And one of the first ways people wake up is through dreams. Often synchronicity as well will be a big one. So they'll start having these coincidences and think, goodness me, how could that happen? I don't believe it. I've just seen that number 3 times, or I've just seen that person 3 times who I haven't seen for 20 years, or they'll dream something. And then the next day, something on the television or on the internet or something someone says will be exactly the same as their dream. And it can be a bit disconcerting. People can think, I've had people say to me who've experienced this, and when they try to analyze it, they will say, oh, I'm scared to even think about it, because their dream has just matched something that's happened in their life. And it's funny for me, because to me, I'm like, why are you scared? But then I remember back to how it was when I first woke up. And the word that people use here in the UK for that is spooky. People will say, oh, that's spooky, and they're sort of afraid of it. And of course, nothing will push you, but now is the time to be woken. So we don't have quite, on a linear level, we don't have quite as much leeway and as much luxury to sit back and wait for these. We do have to kind of wake up. So the dreams are one way to do this. And this is because your dreams are the time when you are able to go into that aspect of the DNA that's non-locational in time. So if you're a 3D thinking person, you'll probably be within a certain parameter within the dream space, dream time. You'll be analysing things that have happened in the day that will come together in a subconscious sense, and they will present in many different symbolic forms, and you may wake up and think, why did I dream about this, and not really understand how to analyse. But these dreams are occurring collectively, and they're all about waking you up, analysing what's happening in your life, working with buried trauma and trauma that's coming to the surface, because that's part of the awakening. Can't get up to 5D with trauma. That's like having a hot air balloon with so many sandbags in, you just sit on the ground. You've got to throw the sandbags out for the hot air balloon to rise up into the air. So that's the metaphor. So yes, and using the dream time as a news channel. So you don't have to read the news, watch television. I mean, you could sit in a cave all day and you would still be getting, if you are connected and you are opening up to this energy, it's blasting in from the galactic core and from the central sun. So you're going to get it wherever you are. It will touch every corner. So your Dreamtime news channel is letting you know what's happening. And if you are consciously awake and you are in that energy and you're fully aware of what's going on, your dreams will be pretty much every night. You'll be traveling, having experiences, learning, you'll be teaching others yourself, and you will be being told what's going on, remote viewing, astral projecting, and all sorts. And then there are many layers to this, many layers. And on one level, we're all complete beginners. You know, we're all beginners because there's so much more to learn wherever you are. So when I look from the beginner point of view, I think, my goodness me, I'm such a baby with all this stuff. And I look forward and think, wow, look at all that expansion. I don't understand any of it. Look at all this code. I can't analyze that code. I don't even know what it means. So this is going to take centuries to work out. But then you can look at your life where you are and think, well, actually, in this respect, I've got to mastery because I have learned how to work in this area. And I look back at where I was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So if you are in this awakening energy, the reconstruction of the DNA template, ascension, if you will see evolution. You will look back and think, I am so much more expanded or further on or more knowledgeable or have more light or whatever word you want to use from where I was. So that's a great majority of people have actually progressed. There are those who are not, who are still in the same place and will repeat the same old patterns day in, day out for years and years and years. And that's the traumas, that's the sandbags holding down the balloon. It cannot take off into flight because of the sandbags. So for people who feel that they're stuck, I doubt they would have found their way to this interview, to be absolutely honest with you, but just in case they have, go for the traumas and the healing first. Look at the past, look at what happened in this life as a child. Don't worry about other lives at this point, just look at what happened in this life and work with healing the traumas. And often they can be buried, so go and find some therapist that you trust that works to assist you with this, hypnotherapy or meditation teachers or tapping, you know, the whole EFT and EFT, and I mean there's so many therapists and healers out there. You know, bioresonance is really good. So there's lots. Or you can do it yourself. You can start doing yoga and find that as you work with the asanas, that some of these traumas are held in muscle, and as you learn to move the muscle of the body, it releases. So often a very aware person can feel after doing a yoga session, they're like, oh gosh, what's happening to me? Because it's bringing up all that stored emotion, because we're energy. We're energy, and we need to flow that energy out. So but for those watching this interview, everyone watching this interview would be on that path of awareness and evolution in different stages.
Yeah, so something I find really interesting is you've referred to starseeds a lot, right? And so I don't have memory. And I've read all your books. Obviously, I found, you know, I read in your book, if you are reading this material, then you are a starseed. And I thought for me, it was just because I was interested. that I find this fascinating to expand my consciousness and whatnot. And the only thing that makes me, well, obviously being interested in it, but the other thing rather makes me believe is I had a kitten. So lots of interesting stuff about the feline race. But I adopted this cat, 11 weeks old. It was a Tuesday night, and I'm laying in my bed, and I'd gone to sleep. My husband Sean's in the living room. Keegan is in the bedroom. 10 o'clock, I go to sleep, and then the kitten wakes me up. I open my eyes because he's on my chest, and to the right of my bed, there's 3 beings. And I'm like laying there looking at them, and the cat's like right here purring at me, right? And I'm looking at them, and I'm like, Sean's in the living room, Keegan's in the bedroom. 1, 2, 3, who are you? And then they slowly faded out of view, and I sat up, and I was like, that was awesome. Who are you? Where are you? You know, and I wanted them to come back, but I haven't had a chance to visit them again yet. But that was really the only, I don't know why I shared that, but I thought that would be fun.
Okay. Amazing. And all part of the awakening, the way we externalize aspects of self, the way that we can be visited by multidimensional aspects of ourselves, or other beings, if you like, in different ways. So there are so many ways to explain what this is. And it can be wonderful, and it can be blissful, and it can also be scary too. You have to be prepared to embrace all of the energy. But if you have this, well, all this is in Masters of the Matrix, it gives you immunity to be able to travel within these dimensions and work with your sovereignty and your empowerment, so that you are not afraid. Because sometimes these beings, yes, they might externalize, they might be externalized aspects of your shadow, but it could be a fleeting visit. For example, you could be pretty much living in integrity and living in light, and you might do one thing that's out of integrity because you were triggered. Say somebody upset one of your children. That's a big trigger for a woman. You know, someone triggers your someone upsets your children, and that really brings out the ego protective instinct massively. And I you know, get this too, and instantly forget all your spirituality, forget all the training, forget all the communication. You're like, oh my god, what are you saying to my child? You know, it's like, that's it, and you change, you go back sort of 20 years. And then what might happen is you need a gentle reminder that you moved out of alignment. So it might be that you're visited by a negative, or what appears to be a negative entity, a darker being, a being that consumes. And instead of being afraid, when you are aware of what's happening in your own reality and how you are creating your reality through the paradigm, you think, right, why would a negative being try to visit me, grab hold of my foot and try and pull me out of my body and throw me into an astral realm? I think I know why, because I reacted that way. And then you might analyze the whole situation and think, you know, and take the overview, and then get in touch with the people that you shouted at or whatever, and say, you know, I'm really sorry for the way I behaved yesterday. I was actually being overprotective over my child, which is natural, but I am sorry, and what I really should do is this and that. So just an example. Mm-hmm. So then you thank that entity. So was the entity that came along, grabbed you by the big toe to throw you out of your astral body into, I'm saying this because this did actually happen to me a few months back. Okay. Yeah, I mean, and I actually saw the entity pulling me out of my astral body. He didn't actually get me out, but I saw him. And the thing is, am I angry with the entity? Am I afraid? Because I would have been in the past. I would have thought, what are you doing? And I've had clients come to me with these same things. And I'm saying this to beginners because this is not something to be afraid of, because that was an externalization of my overreaction over something occurring with one of my children that I love. And I knew straight away. I woke up and saw this, and I knew exactly immediately why he was there, because I'm in a state of instant integration, if you like. When you get to that level of constant clearing and mastery over the matrix, you go into instant integration. It's not always instant. Sometimes you might take a while, depending on how big the challenge is. An hour or two as opposed to like a week, though. It's exactly. Or half a day, or maybe 2 days max or something. Yeah. So I knew straight away. As soon as I woke up, I would then send texts to put everything right. And then, but you thank the entity. So at the end of the day, was that entity positive? Or was that entity negative? In that moment, absolutely positive, because it was a gift, right? In awareness. Absolutely. So you say thank you. And that's why in the Masters of the Matrix, gratitude is part of integration and part of mastery. Because, and then you even go into even further, such as gratitude for the service to self and service to others structures in the first place. That's really hard to do when you start to research what's actually gone on, how these atrocities and crimes against humanity have been committed. It's very hard to go into gratitude. So you take a multi-dimensional view, and this is where your bilocation or consciousness comes in. You stand strong within the human physical self, and you say no more. You bring your boundaries down. I will not tolerate this. This will not be happening any longer, and you will stop. And I will do whatever necessary to ensure that this stops. But you don't go into retribution or the need for vengeance or war or battle. But then you find gratitude on the higher levels, and you're not doing it because you are genuinely grateful for this situation. You are doing it because gratitude's a code. It's a code, and all our emotions are codes. We're learning to create new emotions, upgraded emotions, higher expansive emotions. Emotions are living. They're living things. We can communicate with all of them, and they're as multidimensional as we are. So then you are able to become fractal with all the parts of yourself. Each chakra is a being within you. You are an infinite being. You are an infinity structure, hence the infinite helix. So that's one of the teachings of the 9 that I've integrated and remembered. And it's fascinating when they told me all this, you know.
That one, I will say that I also worked with and integrated to the point where, and this gets into the whole forgiveness piece. My understanding at the moment is that when you can forgive another for a choice that they had made, because we don't want to make it right or wrong or evil or what have you, but they made a choice out of their own sovereignness.
Or lack of.
Pardon me, or lack of, yeah, exactly. Or lack of. When you can forgive another for a choice that they made, and witness it through the eyes of love or the Christ consciousness, it lifts a shadow from the world.
Yes.
So a couple of things. I'm curious what happens in the field when that happens. And the reason why is because when I did that work with you, I am now aware that when things are brought into my awareness, there's purpose for it. Yes. I don't like if no matter how dark it is.
Yes.
So in that particular instance, I was made aware of an action that one of the service to self structures that we were talking about earlier today had completed. There was a video floating around that was on the NYPD, whatever videos. And it was very dark, very, very, very dark. And I remember I would say to Source, okay, you got to help me out with this one. And perhaps that's the bilocation, or I'm aware of it. And I'm only limited in my capabilities as a human being from a 3D perspective, but from a higher perspective, I can see that this is much different. Anyway, in that moment, I took my crystals and I lit my incense, a little candle, and I took a bath. And I truly felt gratitude for this darkness being brought to my awareness, because I was confident that through my witness, I could I could release it essentially to the light so that it would remove a shadow from the planet. So forgiveness is really not done for another. It's really done for yourself, but it benefits all.
Exactly. That's exactly how it is. Forgiveness, it is not you know, the amount of people in 3D that will say, I'll never forgive. I will never forgive. That's because they are constantly looking at the wrong that's been done to them, and that they will not allow that wrong. And they are right. They are right and they are correct. And it's part of the process to go through that. But when you awaken beyond 3D, you realize exactly what you have said. Forgiveness is a code. Forgiveness is an energy. Forgiveness is a living being. And you create that within yourself. You are not doing it for the other person. You are doing it for you. And there is that saying, the hater drinks the poison. If you are in a state of, I will never forgive, you are drinking poison. Or you may be in a state where you are no longer angry and you are making a statement, I will never forgive. That's not as intense. So you may be putting a couple of drops of poison onto your tongue instead of drinking a whole bottle. But the idea is to move the poison away and drink ambrosia instead, you know. And so forgiveness is done for you. It's done for you and for the collective, because as you say, forgiveness creates an energy, it creates a ripple within the field. It's part of compassion, it's part of service to others, it's part of love. And that's
the code, that the forgiveness and it was forgiveness and compassion equals unconditional love.
Yes.
When you embody that, that's what activates the fifth strand of DNA. That's the evolution part, right? The expansion.
That's what activates DNA in itself, not necessarily the fifth strand. What that does is it takes you out of the double helix, two-stranded formation, as in the DNA that we see, the physical DNA. It takes you into this quantum DNA structure, which scientists call junk DNA. It isn't junk, it's a quantum field. So it takes you into DNA reconstruction and growth, which is a non-linear process. And the fifth strand is a metaphor, really, to show us where the star seeds are collectively predominantly. You've got a few that are not quite at fifth strand, you have a few that have gone beyond fifth strand, but predominantly that's where they are, and that is the strand formation that creates the fifth dimension. But it's that is a metaphor in one model. That's the model the nine show me. There may be other channels that will say we're at the seventh strand or the 1284th strand, and they are going to be correct, because there are so many models to explain, as I've said, code. And the nine was speaking to me recently and said, because I'm visualizing the fifth strand in my mind as 5 strands swirling together. Now we've got a fifth one, and it's creating this helix with 5 strands in it. And then the nine is saying to me, yes, that's a good visualization for you to have, but let us show you a more accurate one. And what they will show me is simply, well, what they actually showed me was a person, a woman, okay? So I can see her like I see you. She's got her hair and she's got clothes. And let's say she's wearing a red blouse and a blue skirt. So I see a blue skirt, a red blouse, a woman, and there's her blonde hair, let's say. All of a sudden, she starts to sort of glow a little bit. So the form is a little bit disorientated. It's because there's a glow there. I can still see she's a woman. I can still see that she's got clothes on, but this is her red top is becoming like a red glow, and her blue skirt is becoming like a blue glow. And then she glows more, and then she glows more, to the point where I can no longer see that she's a woman. All I am seeing is a glow of rainbow light. That's what's happening to our DNA. It's becoming more and more and more light. It's glowing with this color, and it's changing form from form to no form.
And is this the merge of antimatter and matter? This
Yes.
is the higher self merged with the physical?
Exactly.
Because
yes.
in 3D, you kind of live your life as a body, you know, you
Yes.
see,
Matter.
smell, what have you.
Yes.
But then when you embrace the spiritual path, you get
Yes.
to live your life in physical form with the assistance and the merge, the braiding.
Antimatter. Yes,
Oh,
the braiding. So antimatter, the 9, matter, magenta, the merge of us coming together. So if I'm here as magenta and the 9 are up there above me and we're separate, but I'm talking to them, then I'm awakening that strand formation. I have a glow, but you can still see the form. But when magenta and the 9 merge together as one, then you're losing form. But you're still going to see me. I'm still going to see you in third dimensional existence, because that's the linear reality we live within. But in truth, there is a merging, and that light is seen with the pineal gland, which is an eye. It is not seen with the physical eyes, it's interpreted by the physical eyes. And there are many who literally see the light and feel that they really do interpret that they're seeing it physically. But it's actually the pineal gland, and they've just got a very good connection between the pineal gland and the physical eyes. But this is ultimately the clairsentience, which is the sensing and the knowing, and the clairaudience, which is the hearing, and the clairvoyance, which is the sight. Ultimately, they are all exactly the same thing. They're all the same. We are interpreting them through our senses as, oh, I feel this. People will say to me, I don't see, but I do feel. Or they might say, I don't feel anything, but I hear it. They speak to me. It's all the same thing. It's just the way we're interpreting. And one often occurs in a linear sense and will be clairaudient only, and then will be something else. And then as we expand and go forward with this, we then learn to use all of them. It's like you said to me just now, you said, I don't have any memories. You don't have any memories. But do you know, without any doubt, have you found the knowing that you are a starseed?
Yeah, I know. I know it. I don't know how I know. I just know. I know there's purpose.
Yeah.
It may not have, well, this might be right here, what we're doing right now. Living my joy is the purpose.
Exactly.
Or helping others is the purpose. I think it's what I know, that it's whatever is put in front of me in that moment.
Okay, so that knowing that you have, that you are a starseed and your living purpose, that knowing
is a memory.
Is your memory. And memory is a bit of a misleading term. And the only reason why the nine, we use memory, is because we perceive in a linear sense. So it's like, I remember being that past life person. I remember being source. But that past life person exists now in the quantum universe of alternate parallel realities. We're just seeing it as in the past. We're seeing source as in the past because we used to be source, but now we're here in physicality. But source exists at all times. So it's above, below, and to the side, and diagonally, and everywhere. Mm-hmm. So the memory is actually knowing, but we perceive it as memory. So these memories that we're activating, and they're memories because we remember why we're here. We remember that there was a call. We remember that we answered the call. We remember that we're here to free this planet and take down the cabal and raise a collective with the starseeds and teach and all those things. That's a memory because we've come to the realization of it. And it is a memory because we did plan this literally before we were born. So it's in the past from that point of view. Mm-hmm. But the place we were in before we were born is timeless. It doesn't have linear time. So it's actually happening now. And the person that you were before you were born is your guidance system now. Mm-hmm. In the future and in the past. So that's why the nine, this whole, see if I can get this one, divine architecture will show you this little structure here where you have this, they have the central point here. Yeah. You have these directions. And so that's
above, below, past.
Yeah, exactly. Past. But this structure is actually a toroidal field. It is a huge swirling construction of many spirals and cycles intertwining together, and one cannot really give it any kind of directional sense because it is a living field. But we're linear and we have a third dimensional brain, which is our interface for decoding code. So the nine present one model. As I said, many channels will have different models. This is the nine's model to teach me, which I'm learning from, therefore they're teaching others through me writing their words, transcribing their words. So they use this as a model for these directions. So down is below, the underworld, the shadow reality, the subconscious, the deeply buried subconscious. And that can be scary and that can also be wonderful. It can be a beautiful, safe place as well. There is no one direction that is fully scary and no one direction that is fully bliss. It's all to do with you. All of these are actually the same place, because this line that goes down actually connects up here and joins here. This is a never-ending infinite line. It's called an event horizon. And this here is a never-ending line called an event horizon. And then there are these two. So this is divine architecture. And then in this one, it goes into the next stage, which I didn't know until I wrote the book, which talks about what this is. So you actually have a circle around the outside in this book, which is the event horizon. So it explains it. But this is the sort of step before that. People have asked me, do I have to read the books in order? If you are spiritually aware and you're on this path, no. It doesn't matter which order you read the books in. If you are a beginner to this, beginner to sacred geometry, then read them in order. Yeah. So then you've got this. This is quantum, the quantum world. All the alternate decisions that you could have made. All the alternate decisions you did make. And above is the higher self, the true twin flame, the world of the clouds, the upper world, the heaven realms. Just polarities, and you can turn the wheel. This is just another way of controlling your reality. And then diagonally, do you know, it took me probably well over 5 years to understand what that diagonal was, because I was seeing it for so long and working with it, but I had no idea what it meant. I knew these and I knew these, and the nine weren't telling me. I even asked other spiritual channels, what are the diagonal lines? I even got an answer from somebody. He said, well, there are other dimensions. And I thought, well, yeah, they are, but so are all of them. I wonder what they actually are. And it wasn't until I was sat in the car one day, before writing this book, my partner said to me, how do the ancestral memories affect us? You know, can we be affected by ancestral memories, and are they the same thing as past lives? And I just went, well, and I started to talk, and then I went, oh, that's the diagonal. I can't believe, thought I was going, Chris, what's the matter with you? I said, oh my goodness, it's been 5 years. The diagonal is the ancestral. And then the nine confirmed. So this is the ancestral. So, because you've got one going forward as well to the future and one going back to the past. Mm-hmm. And you have loads of others too, but they've not got that far yet. So let's talk about the DNA.
Which
is this, by the way? That is the DNA.
I'm rereading this one for the second time. Interesting. I was gifted with a psychic medium session yesterday, and she talked about the dark forest. And then, of course, I read a passage last night about the dark forest going down below, which I was practicing in meditation this morning. So
which
about
the safety, it's your cocoon, and it's your womb. It's the womb of the goddess. You know, it's you are enveloped by the safety of the mother. That's the dark forest. So it can be seen as scary, but ultimately you're in a dark place before you're incarnated. You are in the womb. So you're going back into the womb, and you can live there. You can explore there. It's wonderful. And you'll find magical entities there, and beautiful trees. And there are little, remember when you were a child and all the books you would read? That's how come I know this. I used to, as a child, we talked about this at the beginning of this interview. That's where I used to play. In my mind, I was always in the dark forest, and often in the light too, but I didn't know what these places were. They were in my imagination. They were just, worlds within my imagination that I was born with, and I didn't understand them. And now I know what they are, and I know them really well because I've been there. And many starseeds will have done. Many starseeds will resonate with this and think, yes, Magenta, I lived there too. When I was a child. So it's like, go back to the childhood. And that's what a lot of the spiritual teachings that say, go back to your childhood and play. That's what that means, because children are so close to this, and they shut a lot of this off as they grow. And that's the dark forest.
And it really, when you do play with your imagination, retreat back to the childhood, it creates a whole sense of wonder. Like, this is so exciting. And I got it's kind of cool too, because I got for Mother's Day, my gift this year from my 18-year-old son was a unicorn. And it was like the best gift ever. And I sleep with them.
That's so lovely. And
I know.
I had from my son a few years ago for my birthday, a beautiful white dragon.
I wanted to talk about dragons because I love dragons. So let's talk about the dragon. Actually, there was a book written by Michael Harrington called, I can't remember it now, but it's basically the Dragon's Breath. He referred to the book as this photon band, this energy that we're in space. He referred to it as the Dragon's Breath.
Well, it is the Dragon's Breath. It is, but I haven't heard this anywhere else, but he's correct. So the Dragon's Breath, and this is all in this book. And I knew nothing of this until I started actually transcribing it. They didn't tell me beforehand, and then I said, do you know what, let's write about it. This actually came out organically as I'm transcribing. So that's the first I'd heard of the Dragon's Breath, and I'm like, wow. And that's because the Dragon's Breath, the dragon breathes fire. The dragon's breath is fire. And so our cosmos and these you said, did you say the photon belt? The photon
band, yeah.
Band, yeah. Well, our cosmos and different places within the cosmos, either within matter and antimatter and both, is, if you look clairvoyantly at some of the antimatter structures, they flicker like flames. They look like fire. So when I was transcribing this, the 9, as I transcribed, they are speaking the words to me to write, but they also show me the visual that goes with the words. So I'm hearing the words and seeing. So I can see this flame, this fire. It looks like fire. You can actually go in and actually open it up and see what it is. It's actually code. It's like mathematical code, but it's in the physical matter universe. They are plasma fields, and plasma is fire. Plasma is the flame. The dragon breathes fire. So the plasma field of, say, the photon belt as one structure, there are many, is the dragon's breath, because it's fire. And there may be other ways to explain this, but the reason why we use, or the 9 use dragon also, is because the dragon is the sacred serpent. And this is another symbol that's been hijacked by service to self. So you say the word serpent and people are, oh, there you go, Magenta's Illuminati, she's talking about snakes. Yeah, I don't like snakes in the real world, by the way. I have to really learn to love snakes, but I am scared of them. I think they're really scary. But anyway, the sacred serpent, or known as the feathered serpent, or the rainbow serpent, what that is the DNA here. We're looking at this directional structure, because as we visualize our DNA structure, we create the match. So if you look at the work of Dr. Emoto, Messages in Water. Yep. Yeah. So he showed how frequency could change structure in water. Okay. So that is kind of the same thing. It's proof, really, although I know it's not scientific proof, but it's proof of your thought is the energy and the DNA is the structure. So what you think of, your DNA matches your thought structure, which is exactly the same thing as saying the particles of the universe want to be seen. They want to engage with you, and the universe will show you proof that you are correct in your thoughts. It's a copying. The 9 call this the cosmic photocopier. It's what the universe is made of. The dragon's breath, as it makes this fire, it's a photocopying mechanism. It copies everything. It makes copies of itself, like a hologram, a holographic universe. So this structure, as we visualize the structure within our minds, we create the match within the DNA. So we can visualize a beautiful angel. This is why people in the New Age Lightworker community visualize angels and unicorns and rainbows, because the frequency behind the universe, the rainbows, the unicorns, and these beautiful angels create a frequency change within the DNA structure, which then creates the matching reality. Mm-hmm. So that's how you can create your reality, by thinking of unicorns and rainbows and crystals. And people who don't understand that think, oh, you New Age lot with your unicorns, you're off on another planet. But we're actually doing something really scientific here.
Yeah, and they say that we're in denial. You're in denial of reality. You're not living in the real world, kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's true for some people within the New Age. They actually are. They're only on the rainbows, and they've forgotten. So that is true for some, but certainly not the whole movement. No, that's not correct. So this, if you imagine your DNA structure is like this, let's say, that's your visual, to give you the directions. Mm-hmm. You have to do this in stages, which is why I say read the book in stages if you are a total beginner. But if you are further on with your spirituality and you've been in this energy for a long time, it won't matter where you start, because there is no beginning to this. What you would do is you've got this event horizon. What we do is what the 9 call collapse the wave. So this is a wave structure, and what you do in your mind but it has to be focused, cohesive visualization. It can't just be a fleeting, that shape, and I turn it into that. It must have momentum. It's a trajectory, because when you create focused intention, you create a trajectory, which is an event horizon, which is the dragon. Because this is the event horizon that is the spiral, and you collapse all of these. You draw all this on itself, you draw all this and all this, you collapse it all in on itself. So you implode the structure, and then you create a long train. So this is like your DNA. You're collapsing the DNA structure. The DNA does this. This is a normal, organic thing for the DNA to do. This is natural, but we've forgotten how to do this because we've only had the double helix. And as we are moving beyond the double helix into the 12 strand and 144 strand template, we will remember how to collapse the wave. So we collapse all this, and then we create this long train, which is like a dragon or a snake, and we go around and we go back and thread through our cell. We go into the DNA. So you thread this piece of this toroidal field, and you thread it through itself. And what that does, you're actually going through the eye of the needle, if you like. You know, in the Bible it says it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than it is for a camel to get through the eye of a needle. What that actually means is a rich man is material, as in 3D. You can't get through the eye of the needle because you can't raise the momentum. You don't have the dragon's breath, which is the same thing as momentum, light speed momentum. It's blue starfire, the Ninth call this. And you can't raise this in 3D. You must raise to the higher dimensions. And then when you create the structure of the DNA that is beyond the double helix, then you are able to change the DNA structure and then work with it consciously. And then it goes back to its organic structure, which is to actually go through itself. And what happens when the DNA turns into this dragon? So your visual is you're riding a dragon. You can actually because you can use 5D form to get to this DNA change. That's why we use so much visualization, because it changes the DNA through the thoughts, through the energetic behind the thoughts. So you can visualize yourself riding a dragon, just diving through a stargate, and the dragon breathes fire as it goes through the stargate, which is the ring of fire. You know, the golden ring, the ring of fire, all of these metaphors coming back into our awareness. But what you're actually doing is the DNA, what it does when it comes out of this toroidal field and forms this long thread and goes back through the center of itself, through its own inner stargate, what it's doing is holding memory. Because when you die, when you go through the death experience, if you haven't raised beyond 3D, the memories scatter, and they don't hold form. The memories scatter, and so you might reincarnate again with a few of those memories, or your memories form part of this oneness, this field that can be read by other structures. It's actually an Akashic record. It can be read. Your memories are read. But if you can hold them cohesively through the death process, then you will incarnate again with all those memories intact as a code within you, which gives you the higher DNA formation, which means you can then move to a higher DNA formation in your next incarnation. So you carry your memories through the death process. So that's death, and that's been hijacked, as we know, by the cabal. They've hijacked all the systems so that we shatter our memories and we can't get them back. That's why we're breaking those systems down by what we're doing here in 3D is occurring there. We're changing the galactic grids, breaking down those structures so that now when we go through the death process, we can hold on to those memories. But what we're doing with ascension, because it has to be done from the physical reality, we can't do it from that reality for this reality. We have to do it from 3D. So all those who've already been through this, they've learned how to bypass the control structure of the death process and going through that trapping system. They've learned how to retain their memories. So they've become higher dimensional entities, other planetary systems, beings. They have incarnated back with that memory intact, so that they would remember how to do this and teach everyone else how to do it, so they can all do it. And as everybody does this, it reaches critical mass, and that's what breaks the structure down. So what ascension is it's doing it while you are still alive in incarnation. We're doing exactly the same thing, but in order to get the memories to be stored and for us to be able to utilize them as many beings in one being, we do this from the physical incarnation. We do not do this from the death process. That is ascension.
Yeah. Basically a life review.
A life review while we're alive. And the dragon is this, collapse down into the dragon. And that's what the return of the dragon has returned, which the nine said. And that's what that means, because everybody is aware. Even if they haven't worked it out and thought, wow, I didn't know I was doing that. Yes, if you're raising your vibration and you are working with this energy, your DNA is doing this already. This teaching is simply making it conscious for you, or it's triggering memories. And it does it. The nine do this in so many different ways. So in this book, the memory of all of this is triggered again and again and again through every single page of the book.
Once this additional DNA is reconstructed, then we have access to much greater intelligence, and we have our abilities back. I have lots of dreams where I'm practicing how to fly again, and I love those dreams. Like I'm running up a wall, and it feels like I'm trying to spread my wings, like from a linear perspective. But so let's talk about the whole superhero thing, because I want change, right? I want to see solutions to the plastic problem. Why can't we, why can't the engineers get together and we can figure out the whole 0 point energy, the free energy? So once this is reconstructed, and is it going to happen in this lifetime where we will have innovative inventions that actually create solutions to clean up our planet, so we can take our place as true caretakers?
As again, with everything, we have a conundrum and we have a paradox. As long as our thoughts on a collective level are, is this going to happen in this lifetime? How much longer is it going to be before we can have clean waters and clean food and no GMOs and no this, that, and the other? How long is it going to take? And are we going to experience it in this lifetime? As long as we're there, we're creating a perpetual cycle that's showing us our thoughts.
Right.
I know, and it's such it really is, cosmic sense of humor or whatever. So what we need to do is go to the place where this has happened, but not in an unrealistic sense. So we don't sit there with our, fluffy bunny rabbits and rainbows, think, oh, I'm in a state of bliss, the world's wonderful. Yes, we need to go there, but we need to also see that, no, it's not. And there's a ton of work to be done. But when we can get to critical mass for letting go of the need to experience this in this lifetime, so we will say, I don't mind if we don't experience this in this lifetime, as long as it occurs for Earth at some point. Maybe my great-great-grandchildren will experience it. Once that reaches critical mass of the surrender to it, that's when it will occur. Everything filters down to match the collective belief system and knowing. And the 0 point field is here. It's also here because that is this, but ultimately this is the singularity, the central point. This is the Stargate. That's where free energy is accessed. So we can get this now within this experience of the DNA reconstruction and riding the dragon. We can access this free energy for ourselves. So we can use this for healing of self. We can use this for reconstruction of DNA and working with shadow, etc. We can use this to create our reality. And in the actual real matter world, that same structure will be tapped into. I mean, some of this has already been done by secret, government or secret programs that already access this energy, but it's done for nefarious purposes. Because if a certain technology is held on to and kept from others, then that gives those that have the technology an advantage because they are ahead of the others. So it's like, we have this secret technology and you do not. You have to pay for all of this energy, but we've got it for free. We're not going to give it to you. That gives them power. So what we do is go inward and find our natural inner technology, which is more powerful than the technology that they have, which is not an inner technology. It is not a technology that's created organically. It is more of an artificial technology structure. We have the organic structure. So when we get to critical mass of being able to utilize our own free energy and let go and surrender to that process and make our reality internal, we implode within. Not in a way that we ignore the rest of the world, but in a way that we realize that our inner space is our outer space. When that occurs and we reach critical mass with that, that's when this free energy will be given. to us. And we are on the precipice of this. It's very exciting. I mean, we really are on the precipice of this, but then we need to move away from that, seeing that precipice and thinking it's now, bring everything into the now moment.
Yeah.
The more people that do this, the more people that live within the paradigm of, I have created fifth dimensional Earth, I am there now, or seventh dimensional Earth, or wherever you want to go, and I am already within this toroidal implosion and coming out, and they understand the way the matrix is working, and they understand the structure, and they're always in a state of integration and analysis with this. The more people that go there, the more that creates this collective reality where these particles wish to be seen and wish to interact with the collective, and they will give you what your paradigm is stating. They will prove to you that your paradigm is correct, and you will have that world. Yeah. We are the ones to make this. We are the ones to do this together in so many different ways, and we each have our own individual roles, but we are the ones that are to do this, and we are doing it. It's happening.
Yeah, we can see the change. Okay, goodness, 12:03. Questions really quickly. I know you took one on Facebook, so I didn't get to see that one. Did you still have that one handy?
That one was, do you mean about sacred geometry?
I think it was about sacred geometry, yes.
I think yes, I actually replied to that person on Facebook.
Cool, I didn't see it, so that's cool.
That was quite an advanced question about sacred geometry and about the whole sort of DNA structure. I don't remember exactly what the question was, but yes, I did answer it. So okay,
so I've got a couple of really quick. What the first one was, what happens when we die? So you answered part of it, that we can you take your level of consciousness sort of like with you, but if you don't awaken, then you won't have that memory that you'll bring back in. But what happens when we die? That was his question.
Okay, so there is no one happening. That's like saying, what happens when I go to the park? Some people are going to get on a slide, others are going to get on a swing, others are going to get on a roundabout, others are going to sit on the grass. So this is a completely unique experience for each individual, depending on the energetic frequency you hold. So this will depend on the awareness you have, the learning that you've gone through, the integration that you've gone through. So you can prepare for that now. I mean, some religions will teach that this reality is the wrong one, the bad one, the awful one, and that the true reality, when you sit on the right-hand side of God, is after you die. That is just as much a distortion as saying, this is the real reality and there is nothing after you die. They're both distortions. The truth is, all the reality is the same thing from the higher reality. And when you die, you walk through a doorway. You shed this, and as we reconstruct our DNA, things will change. We don't have to shed the body. We don't have to go through the death process and reincarnation. We can have immortality, but that in itself is misleading if it's interpreted in a third dimensional sense, and that's a whole other issue, and it is touched upon in the book. But at the moment where we are, where most of us are in 3D, let's say, a 3D individual going through the death process, that would leave the physical body, memories, the consciousness remains, but it depends on the belief system. So if the belief system is that there's nothing, and they've believed their whole life that there's nothing after they die, they will go into like a kind of a nothingness, but they will slowly realize, or however long that takes, there's no time, that they're not in nothingness and that they're still thinking. And then, because you're given what you expect, you are given what you believe and what you expect, because you can't be given something you don't expect to that point. If somebody passes over and instantly they're in a great beautiful palace and there's Jesus sat there, they're going to freak out, because they're going to think, I thought there was nothing. So they'll be taken into nothing and slowly shown that, oh, I'm still thinking. That why am I still thinking? It could take eons of time or 1 second, and it is actually both. But if you do expect to sit in a gold palace with Jesus, that's more than likely the way you will go. You will go to that presentation. Basically, your energetic makeup That's all your belief systems and emotions and thoughts will externalize themselves and show themselves to you in your environment. That happens here as well. That's exactly what we're living, but it's shown in a denser matter way. When we pass over, it will be shown in a antimatter way. So it's much sort of thinner. When it comes to the memories, and I'm not saying you have to know, you don't have to have known how to create that dragon and go through the Stargate. You could have done it through happiness. If you've had a happy life, a good life, you've helped people, you're a healer, you might know nothing about the DNA whatsoever, but you've still retained memory, because it's all to do with the emotional makeup as well. Because the DNA simply responds to an emotional frequency that comes in through a visual or an emotion. So if you're a good, loving person with an open heart, you will have created that structure and hold your memory. Mm-hmm. If you've become spiritually aware in some form and you are integrating, learning about the antimatter realm or particles or God or whatever you want to call it, then you will have activated the ability to retain memory even more. So the experience is completely different. And also there must be a mystery as well, because when we're in this reality, we cannot say, well, this is what is going to happen, because we are supposed to not know. We're supposed to know and not know. That's the paradox. Learning. That's the journey. We find the knowing, and the answer isn't handed to us, and we watch a big television screen and see what's going to happen to us before we go. Yes, we can. We can go astral projecting. That will teach us. We can find out. We can be very, very prepared for that process in our life, and that's the aim, is to get prepared for the next stage. But we're not going to know everything about that stage. And it's the same with any creative process. The death process is a creative process, because you're going into the next octave of life. And when you go through that death process, you are going through a Stargate. And when you go through a Stargate, the coordinates you hold within you will determine the destination. So this is physical matter in a spaceship, UFO. This is physical matter within the physical body, through this DNA reconstruction that I'm talking about, and through the death process. So your coordinates, which are your energetic makeup, will determine where you go, which is why the starseeds can go above the trapping system, because their coordinates are higher in formation and in frequency than the service to self structure, which can only get to the fourth dimension in the model the 9 years, which is not the fifth dimension. But in other models, some people will use the word fourth density, which is what the 9 teach as fifth dimension. So from that model, you would be going to a harmonic somewhere between the third density and the fourth density in that model. And there are many models of dimensions and densities, but the point is the starseeds can go above the trapping system, because they can raise the codes, they raise the frequency higher. So you can have 2 people going through the death process. Somebody is fully in 3D and doesn't have any beliefs, and they will go through that Stargate that is the death process, and they will go somewhere appropriate for their energetic frequency. And then you may have a fifth dimensional thinking person who's been following a spiritual journey their whole life, and they'll go to somewhere completely different. So the death process is a Stargate, and it is the only way to know where you will go is to choose where you will go. And the way to choose where you will go is to be who you are and know that your environment reflects who you are. It's very similar to life, really. And we have a life review as well. That's metaphor for the reading of our own memory fields. If we're able to read our own memory fields, we will read our own memory fields. So we don't need a life review. We review our own life. If we can't read our own memory fields, then the higher dimensional aspect of us, so 5th, 6th, 7th dimensional aspect, which will be seen as a Christed being, an ascended master, an angel, they will read the fields for us and hold it in their memory. We won't get it. So what we will be is still 3D after we've died. So we'll be like, what's happening to me? Where am I? we might not know we've died. We might try to get back to Earth. That's where you get hauntings from, and trapped spirits. And, you know, they've been 3D spirits that have been unable to read their own memory field. So they're unable to go through a life review. The life review is stored within the higher dimensional self. But if we've already accessed the higher dimensional self here in this life, we can read our own memory fields because we are the angel.
Right.
So
yeah, wow, so cool. Thank you. Okay, next one. Why do we feel spirit around us more often sometimes and not so much other times?
Well, that would be to do with the DNA reconstruction. So if we're in, because it's a non-linear process, so say we're looking at a double helix, a triple helix, and a beyond the triple helix, let's say. When we're in beyond the triple helix, we'll feel spirit around us all the time. When we're in the triple helix, we'll probably feel spirit around us the majority of the time. When we're in the double helix, we're not going to feel spirit because that's a linear reality. Now, we don't really want to feel spirit around us all of the time necessarily until we've worked with this for a long time and we are adept at multi-location, which means we will be able to sense the double helix, the triple helix, beyond the triple helix, and the infinite helix simultaneously. When we can do that, we're already in one. So it's not that spirit is around us all the time. We are that spirit, and we are the physical, and there's no spirit and there's all spirit. We're in that place. But until we get there, we're going to feel spirit as a separate thing. So that's because we're moving in and out from double helix to triple helix and beyond the triple helix. What that also would equate to is our emotions. So if we're frightened, angry, unsure, worried, we're going to be in double helix and we're going to not feel spirit. However, sometimes we can externalize spirit at our darkest moments and feel spirit more than ever. That's because we're deeply in double helix, and then we've externalized that triple helix beyond the triple helix aspect that's coming in to remind us to come out of where we are. So there's, you know, we're always one. It's used in different ways, but often when we feel joy, bliss, happiness, freedom, excitement, all of those lovely emotions, we are liable to feel spirit around us. And it depends on the type of spirit. Sometimes we might feel a very lost soul around us, a ghost-like spirit. It's because that spirit needs your help. It's come to you for you to release it. There are individuals who do this role here. They do this job. They release spirits from being trapped and help them to raise their memories and go to the light or whatever. So the answer to that again is it depends on what the kind of spirit is, but usually the answer to that is you're simply moving in and out. And if you want to use the analogy of 3D, 5D, you're in the 3D Earth or the 5D Earth, which is simply a metaphor for your changing DNA structure. So in 3D, you're not going to feel spirit around you very much, and in 5D, you will feel them around you all the time.
Lovely. All right, this next one is, somebody said yesterday, can I get some good news from the universe? Tell me what's going on. So I think that might be more of, where are we at from a collective perspective?
Well, I mean, we are higher dimensionally, fifth dimension. We're in a really good place because we have to view this from a linear point of view. So we have to see this from the point of view of 2018, June 2018. We've just been through the summer solstice, which was another high energy point. So where we are in our starseed evolution is fantastic, really, really great. Everybody's waking up to this beyond the triple helix energy, or learning to understand what the triple helix is. So we've got trilocation of thought. People are able to not just assimilate 2 concepts, but 3. Everybody's coming into that right now. Many are aware of the 5th dimensional Earth. Many people are living their mission, and that's deconstructing the control system, and it's taking away those trapping systems. It's preventing the deep state cabal from following their machinations and plots. So we're in a very, very good place, and it's very, very good news from that point of view. From a linear point of view, we are going through, as I've said, the deluge. So we have a flood of information, and that can be very confusing for people. Everywhere they look, there's new information, and it's contradicting itself left, right, and center. We then have this collective lesson in discernment. Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? Who do we trust? Who do we listen to? So we're learning to discern. And the reason why we're learning to discern is our discernment teaches us how to be energy systems, teaches us how to be empathic, so that we can then hold the memories, go through the Stargate, ride the dragon. So it's all connected. So that's difficult for a lot of people. The collective lesson in discernment is very, very confusing. So there's a lot of upheaval occurring in the systems on this planet right now. And what's actually occurring is the great reveal within the third dimension. So that great reveal is incredibly disturbing. And even if we've been aware of it for a long time, we're going to have loved ones in our family and our friends that are not aware of it, who don't believe it, or who've never heard of it. And these dark plans and plots and agendas are going to be coming to light at the moment. So that's going to cause a great upheaval within the third dimension when these things start coming to light. And these things are very dark and atrocious, and they will hurt people emotionally. People will be very sad and want to cry when they hear about these things, which is completely and utterly natural and normal. And this is why everything occurs in waves, because if the whole planet was all going through the same thing, there would be no one there to catch the people who are discovering this information. So we are kind of there. We are in, and it's good news from the higher dimensional perspective, and obviously for this planet it's great news. We're getting what we want. Everything is being freed. But for example, if you use the analogy of someone being freed, you might see the person who's been in prison for 30 years be freed in front of your eyes, and you will feel sorry for that person because they've been locked away and they didn't deserve to be locked away, and they will have suffered, and you are going to see that. And that person may be a child. It's that kind of energy that's coming at us in 3D, but that has to occur in order for truth to be seen and for realizations to come to people who have been hidden away from what's really going on this reality. So that's not an easy energy to live through. But on the higher dimensions, this is, we can't stay where we were.
No.
It has to change.
Humanity needs to, I've heard another teacher refer to it as, it's time for humanity to wake up.
Yes.
And to reckon with their creations on an individual level. That's the work on the self, which benefits the all. So what we're really witnessing is the collective shadow of humanity being revealed so that we can love it free.
Yes, that's
And we can evolve.
Yes.
Well, we've gone way over time. I have more questions, but we've run out of time. So I don't know if, should we pause the recording now, say goodbye? Because I do want to talk to you 1 minute quickly afterwards. Should we do that? So thank you so much. Very, very much loved the conversation. It was great. I do hope it's beneficial for as many people that this recording meets, and it might help to answer their questions and lead them forward on their journey. So I'm just gonna, so thank you, and I'm gonna stop recording now. Thank you so much, Harry.
Thank you. In this channeled transmission, I enter into an expansive, transformative and activating exploration of interdimensional dialogue, discussing the mechanics of Stargate ascension. This cutting-edge information holds key codes, maps and coordinates for the starseeds on Earth, as they go through this process of DNA reconstruction and regrouping of cosmic memory themselves. The significant codex of information is downloaded to the reader, as they, through this sacred text, are called by the Dragon, Excalibur, Crystalline Light Geometry, Atlantis, and the Emerald Flame. I am so very pleased to present my new book, The Infinite Helix and the Emerald Flame,